Hello, I'm Emma Goldswell and welcome to Effin Hormones, the podcast about perimenopause and beyond. It's been a bit of a while, hasn't it, since me and my good friends Helen, Terry and Bina have been able to get together, so we thought it was high time for a little catch-up. Now, I don't know about you, but it has been a roller coaster of a few months. I've spent a good few weeks not being able to access any progesterone, and there's been a heck of a lot going on in the political and campaigning side of things, which we will let you hear all about. But first, let's have a big old catch-up with the gang. How are we all, friends?
The sun's out, the evenings are lighter, and that's joyful. It's really like spring is here, finally, but I've just seen a weather forecast for next week and it says we're going to have snow in Manchester.
Oh, come on.
Why not?
As a very wise man once said, Prince, sometimes it snows in April, and it's true.
It's true. It's very true.
Because, and I know this because my birthday is in April, which is approaching, which we're going to talk about because it's my birthday and it's my party and I'll cry if I want to. I have, on my birthday, 22nd of April, if anyone's interested, sunbathed and gone sledging.
Really?
Snowdrifts in Yorkshire. 1981, snowdrifts in Yorkshire. True fact.
Amazing. I love it. Are you more often sunbathing than sledging?
Yes, more often a bit of sun by my birthday, sort of end of April. But yeah, do get snow sometimes.
Aren't we British chatting about the weather?
Did someone just mention it's their birthday?
Yes, I did. I like to advertise the fact so I can maximise the amount of presents and cards I get.
That reminds me.
I was going to say.
That's one less, Emma.
Is it?
50.
No. Yeah, 52.
52?
Yeah,
Right.
it's not bad, is it really?
You're 4 years nearer to getting the free bowel screening kit.
Yeah, happy daddy. And only 8 years till I get a bus pass. I mean, it's all good, isn't it, really? So much to in life.
Oh, well,
What
you
does
are
the-
technically.
What does
I think
the bowel screening kit entail?
I think it's called a fit kit. It's a poo kit. Basically, you test your
Oh, okay. Right.
bowel screening. You get it free after 56.
And then you put your poo in the post. I've heard about
Yeah, totally. You put it back in the envelope. Poor posties.
that. No wonder there's...
Are they on strike? And yeah.
I would.
Worked on a radio station one time when a poo arrived in the post for one
my
of the
God.
presenters.
I know who that presenter was.
It hadn't been wrapped properly. So they'd wrapped it properly so it didn't all come out because it was coming out of the
Oh, no.
Honestly.
Surely, why didn't they just stop it?
Exactly.
Chuck it away as hazardous waste.
Well, no, I've had
No, it was
odd mail,
delivered.
but they X-ray it. So I had mail in the post once, and it was X-rayed because they thought it was suspicious, and they said it doesn't look too dodgy. But the post person who arrived at my desk and gave it me stayed with me while I opened it, but someone had sent me a live insect.
Oh my God.
I used to work in nature programs. So basically, it was a live insect that they'd found on a blood pressure monitor in a GP practice. And I opened it thinking it was dead, and the next minute it started flying. So everyone in the office was screaming. But it'd been tested, like Royal Mail had
Right.
thought.
How have we got from Emma's birthday to this?
You mentioned the poo in the post.
Oh yeah, you
Well, you
mentioned the
mentioned the
bowel
poo.
screening. It's your fault, says it.
Terry, it's all your fault.
Right,
Went straight to the toilet with your humour again.
of course you did. Come on, what's the plans for your 52nd birthday?
I'm having a very civilised middle-aged cheese and wine soiree. Thank you. But Helen thinks I'm being very middle-aged because I'm actually having a party that Helen thinks it's in the day. But it is 5 or 6 p.m. it's starting. Is that it?
5 or 6 p.m. You've not decided yet.
I haven't really, no. I'm still
You
deciding.
go for 5:30.
That's a brilliant idea because I've done something at 5 and
Bang in the middle.
and now I'm getting confused.
But you said that curfew was at 9, didn't you?
Probably will be in bed by 9:30.
And so you've given an end time. That's not like, is it because you'll be tired? It's not because the baby needs to be in bed or anything.
The baby stays up later than me sometimes.
Listen, daytime partying is where it's at in midlife, right? Annie Mac does stuff that finishes at midnight, doesn't she?
I'm going clubbing in Warwick in a few weeks.
Terry's going clubbing.
Do you know why I'm going? Because it starts at 6 p.m. Cafe Mambo.
Get
Warwick.
you.
Live, yeah, outdoors.
Like, I went to Homo Electric in Manchester last year. It started at 4 in the afternoon. I was home by midnight. I was very happy. Woke up the next day. Had a great night. I was like, this is the way it should be. And Helen, when we say, is it Sasha, the DJ Sasha who?
Yeah, so my mate went to see Sasha at Manchester Cathedral in the afternoon. Had an absolute whale of a time and loved it. And I was like, this is the way forward. Emmett, you're very trendy. You're very
on trend.
Bang on trend. I'm excited for it because, I'm 52, not 25. Because when I was 25, I'd have been downing a bottle of wine at home, stumbling to the bus at 10 p.m. to then go into town to get to a nightclub for after 11.
Do you know what? Describing it all now, I'm like, ugh.
And also sticky dance floors where people had spilt so many shots and pints of lager that your feet would just stick to the floor. Oh, yeah, makes me fart as well.
When the smoking ban came in, and then the first few times you went to a pub or anywhere, and the smell of everywhere was just awful because for years, the smell of sick and rancid drinks that have just got, masked by all the cigarettes. And so when the smoking ban came in, I just remember going into places going, oh my God, it smells so bad.
I remember being there. I'd forgotten about that completely.
But I do remember thinking that, the day after the smoking ban came in, waking up the next morning going, oh, thank God my hair and my clothes don't stink of cigarettes. And it was just so nice to wake up relatively clean. I mean, I was in the gutter, but, I didn't smell of my hair.
With a kebab on your face.
Yes, that's happened.
At least I don't stink of fags anymore.
So, right, we're coming to your house.
Yes.
There's going to be no cigarette smoke, no kebabs. How are you feeling about being 52? Is it all right?
Well, yeah, I think anything past 50, you just crack on, don't you, really? It's the older you get, the more you go, oh, another birthday. It's not as significant, I guess, is it, really?
You are a sort of living testament to the idea that life begins at 50, though, aren't you?
Yeah. Thank you. Yes, I am, actually. I mean, no one's ever said life begins at 50, but it has for me, so that's fine. Although, let's not forget something traumatic that happened to me last week on the tram, and I was accused of being Neve's grandmother for the first time.
Oh, no.
What?
Yeah. Yeah, this complete stranger on the tram. We were chatting away, having a lovely chat, about knitted jumpers and all that sort of stuff, and how old the baby was, and blah, blah, blah. And then I was about to get off the tram. Are you her grandma, then?
What?
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah.
Why the question?
Yeah.
Don't know. I don't get it.
What did you say?
I said, no, I'm one of her mums, actually, and stormed off the tram with me.
Oh. Yeah, but parents could be in their 20s. So, you might, you might have had that 10 years ago as well. I'm probably digging a hole here, but
if it's any consolation, Emma, I was on the beach, we were on a family holiday. I was on the beach. My brother and my mum had gone off back to the hotel or something. It's just me and my dad hanging out on the beach, and I was 14 years old, and I looked older at 14 probably than I do now because of my awful 80s haircut. And some woman referred to me as my dad's wife. And I tell you what, I'm 14 as well, right? If I could have dug a massive hole in the sand and just buried myself in it for the rest of the day, it's horrible though, isn't it? It was horrible. It's not nice, is it?
It is horrible, but the truth is, I've met plenty of grandparents who are 40, so of course I could be a grandparent, but you should just never ask and sort of assume those sort of things, should you really?
There's quite a few things around that whole thing that you shouldn't ask. And when are you having a baby? Oh my God, just don't ask.
I've done that. I sat down in a hair appointment and said to the hairdresser, when's the baby due? And she said, this dress makes me look really fat.
Oh, no.
It was just the belly, though. Everywhere else, she was completely in proportion, but her belly was massive. She looked like she was about to have a baby.
Oh, and that's a bad time to say it because you can't just apologise and walk away.
I know, it was right at the beginning.
And they're about to cut your hair.
Yeah.
No.
I've not done it since then. I've never said anything to anyone who might look remotely pregnant, even if they look like they're about to drop a baby.
Yeah. You only do it once, that kind of thing, don't you?
I think there's certain questions as well. I was asked by a stranger probably about 6 or 8 months ago. Again, just a random chat, and I can't remember where we were, but do you have any kids? I was like, no. And why?
What?
Yeah. And I'm like, why?
And did you say that's a very personal question?
I think sometimes, when you're sort of taken off guard, you don't. Actually, I just laughed and just shrugged because I wasn't quick enough. Because I was so astounded that a total stranger would ask me, why don't you have kids? And I'm like, yeah.
So just yet another opportunity for you to out yourself, should you want to. Not that that's necessarily a reason, but
no, true. It's not.
No, that's but still, I was just a bit like, where do I begin? No.
Well, sit down and I'll tell you a story.
Should we get a cup of
Take a little
tea?
time. But
No.
if you want the whole thing, then honestly,
People,
people.
I think that's the other thing as well, though. It's not like people are going out of their way to try and upset you. People are just trying to be well-meaning in conversation. I very rarely, in my experience at least, are those questions coming from a place of malice or those kinds of comments coming.
I know.
It's just clumsiness,
Anyway, a couple of you have mentioned as well Race Around the World. Why are you two going on about Race Around the World?
Oh, well,
No spoilers. I haven't watched any of it yet.
but I think we're halfway through it, or are there just a couple more episodes?
I've
left
never
at the
watched
moment?
Race Around the World. What is it?
It's a great show.
It's pairs of people, so it's either couples or it's just friends, or in some cases it's on this series there's two father-daughter combos, and they have to get from the East Coast, so the West Coast of Canada. So they have to go across Canada, but not a direct route. They keep getting different checkpoints, and they have a certain budget, so they can't just fly it. They can't just get coaches all the way. They have to hitchhike, they have to earn money as they're going, and they just have to get to the West Coast as quickly as possible. So on this one, there are two women who are friends. Kathy and Tricia are women of a certain age, and they are menopausal.
They're not women of they're the same age as me. Why am I saying
This is the thing. This is the thing. That
women of a certain age? I freaking hate that.
they are. Well, listen. At the last
Women in their 40s.
They were-
Women in their 40s.
They are of a certain age for the menopause, is what I meant. But what happened in the last episode I watched, they were hitchhiking at this gas station, and this man was on the phone to his mate saying, "There's two old women here who are looking for a lift," and actually called them old. They're 47 and 48, or 48 and 49. They are women.
So they're menopausal, and are they okay? I mean, they're not suffering from symptoms too much, or how's it going?
This is not going to spoil the enjoyment of the programme for you. This is not a spoiler. But one of them is definitely having hot flushes, and I ended up shouting at the television the other day because one of them said, "Oh, I'm just really stressing out at the moment because I'm having a hot flush, but you just have to grin and bear it, don't you?" And I was like, "No,
That was your mantra, wasn't it?
get medicated, sort it out."
You're right, Terry. To be fair, if you go back and listen to the first episode of Effin Hormones called Meet the Gang, that's exactly the phrase that you used, Emma. Grinned and bared it. Yeah.
Well, being someone that grinned and bared it for so many years and was an idiot, I now get frustrated when other people do it. But that's the beauty of hindsight, I guess, isn't it, really? But yeah, so she's doing this race across Canada at the moment and really suffering with the hot sweats and menopausal symptoms and just grinning and bearing it. So
we need to support them. We did hear from someone in Ontario, later on we're going to do some shout-outs if you've been getting in touch with us recently. Thank you. You're going to get some shout-outs later. And there is someone from Ontario, which is Canada, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, yeah, there you go.
okay, girls, that is enough of a catch-up. Oh, that was a lot, wasn't it? Right, as I said earlier, there has been a lot happening in the menopause world in the UK recently, and our Helen has been good enough to put together a little roundup.
I have. I wanted to bring you a little recap of some things that have been going on, particularly in March. So we're lagging a bit behind, but you know what? There were a lot of video clips of some quite amazing women having a good old rant flying around the place on social media. And I've been dead busy recently, so I paid attention to a couple of them. But actually, I just wanted to give you a sense of everything that's been going on, because quite frankly, there are some amazing people who are out there who are campaigning and really taking the government to task as much as they possibly can to try and help us out. So cast your minds back. If you listen to the Carolyn Harris episodes, Carolyn Harris MP, that came out in February, she is really at the vanguard of a lot of this menopause campaigning, isn't she? And when we spoke to her, she was disappointed at the time because a load of recommendations had been made that had been rejected by the government. A lot of them had been rejected by the government, not every single one, but a lot of them. Check out that episode and you'll hear more about that for the full details on that. But more recently, the Women and Equality Select Committee has been hearing evidence from menopause campaigners, including the fabulous Carol Vorderman, who you're going to hear from in a bit, who I've decided we're going to give an effing to in this episode. So let's mention that later. But I wanted to bring you some highlights from all of that because a heck of a lot has happened. So basically, a select committee is a group of cross-party MPs or members of the House of Lords, and they get together to look at specific issues. Carolyn Harris is part of that committee, and Kemi Badenoch is Minister for Women and Equalities. And they clashed, as the newspapers would say, over the fact that Kemi Badenoch had dismissed the idea that menopause should be given a special legally protected status under the Equality Act. Now, you might hear this being referred to as a protected characteristic, and that means you can't be discriminated against under the Equality Act. So they had a bit of a tetchy exchange. Now, let's have a little listen to this and see what you think of this. So this is Carolyn Harris and Kemi Badenoch.
You are speaking from a left-wing perspective on creating something. I am speaking from a right, centre-right perspective. I do not think. I'm so. Well, I do. I think that it influences the approach that you take. I do not think creating another pilot on more leave is what is going to help women who have the menopause.
If I could just let the Secretary of State know that I didn't personally write the report from the committee, and it's a politically mixed committee, so my politics have absolutely nothing to do with that.
But I don't think that the approach that you're taking is one that a centre-right government would take as. Pardon me?
Committee's left wing.
The committee is not responsible for policy, Carolyn. I am, and I have said that I don't think this is the right way. The committee is responsible for scrutiny. I'm very, very welcoming to suggestions, many of which we've taken up. This is not one of them.
But we didn't take many up, did you, from the menopause report? Do you know what you did take up?
There are many actions which the committee will recommend, which we will take. There are many that we won't take. It is my job to create the policy, and it is your job to do this.
Minister, I thank you. I think your commitment to women has been displayed quite adequately this afternoon.
No, I think what you're talking about is a disagreement. No, pardon me, I will respond to that. We're free to have disagreements on how to deal with the menopause, but that in and of itself is not a display of my commitment to women. I think women know exactly how committed I am to women's rights. We have a policy difference, and I'm sorry that we do.
What they were specifically referring to in that clip was trying to get menopause leave. And that was one of the things that Carolyn's been campaigning for, so that if you're feeling ill under the menopause, it doesn't necessarily count as your sick leave because it's protected. What do you think of that, girls?
I think, number one, I think it came across as patronising and rude.
Yeah.
Number two, going into party politics when it's clear that the select committee's cross-party is ridiculous. So it comes down to like ideological nonsense. Number three, if you are talking from a perspective of a centre-right, I'm doing inverted commas here, then, if the Conservatives like to think of themselves as fiscally sound and, this is how they talk about themselves, there are swathes of women who have to leave the workforce because they are basically fucked because of the menopause.
1 in 10.
1 in 10, plus all the other people who call in sick, have to have changes made. Now, we've met people on this podcast who have told us they were at the top of their game and then they were struck.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem very fiscally sound to me to not take this seriously, because if you've got a happy, healthy workforce, you have an economically productive country. So actually, to me, it just seems almost like the antithesis of what the Tory government would say, and then because there's such a lack of kind of rigour in Kemi's response, to then go on about party politics and its lefty woke nonsense or what. I mean, for God's sake, it's a universal issue. You have a healthy nation, you have a productive nation.
She just completely undermined her argument, hasn't she, by going to that?
But totally. But there is no argument. I mean, I think there is, ins and outs of whether something should become policy or not. You can't just knock it out. But there are recommendations and reports are written for a reason. And it's not like people just whip out a report overnight from their arses. There's a lot of statistics and facts and stuff that go into this stuff. So then just to disregard it and pull out some kind of party political line to justify not taking something seriously when actually it's detrimental to the health and mental well-being and the economy. If we're going to be really, Tory about it, the economy, it just strikes me as counterproductive.
She's made it political, but it's not a left-wing issue, the number of women that take their own lives during menopause. It's not a left-wing issue going through menopause. It's not a left-wing issue wanting to have access to HRT and wanting to have access to GPs who know what women go through in their 40s and 50s, that can have a huge impact on them physically, mentally, and on society. That's not a left-wing issue. That's a women's health and a women's equality issue. And it shouldn't be party political. It's across the whole board. Yeah. Women's equality. 52% of the population are women and go through menopause. And she's acting like this is something that people are politicising. But that was the gaslighting, wasn't it? It was the gaslighting of older women as well. It was the, you're politicising this issue. And they're going, you're not listening to what the issue actually is, because you wouldn't politicise it if you understood the issue.
Yeah, gaslighting is exactly the word that was in my mind as well, Terry. And it's interesting, this particular clip, I mean, it went everywhere. People were sending me this clip left, right and centre. And I was like, wow. Anyway, so that was early on in March. So that was Carolyn and Kemi Badenoch. And then later in March, the committee met again. And this time it was to hear some evidence from some kick-ass women from the campaign group Menopause Mandate. And a couple of people who've appeared on Effin Hormones were there for that second session later in March. Karen Arthur from Menopause Whilst Black podcast, and Kate Muir, who's a menopause campaigner, author, and the producer of Davina's Channel 4 documentaries on menopause. You can go back into our archive and check out both of those two because they're excellent. Mariella Frostrup, who's like the first person who I can remember talking about menopause in the media. I know people had before then, but in my memory, Mariella Frostrup really sort of led the charge, I thought. She's the chair of Menopause Mandate. She was there as well as the legendary Carol Vorderman. They all spoke at this. So let's have a listen to some highlights from this, and let's kick off with Mariella Frostrup.
The sense that we're sort of just treading water, which is only heightened by the fact that the minister can't be bothered to turn up. You know, they'll appoint any number of czars and ambassadors and you name it. But actually, really, we're not a minority interest. We're 52% of the population. We don't need, actually, a women's health ambassador or an HRT czar or a menopause ambassador if we just had equal treatment. And so, yes, the HRT shortages are absolutely shocking. And the fact that they are ongoing and they haven't been addressed, the fact that there was an HRT czar appointed who lasted 3 months, and then basically it was announced that she'd done her job and she was going back to deal with the pandemic or with COVID. It was a complete travesty. I mean, nothing had been done, nothing has changed, and because there isn't a national formulary, it's causing incredible issues. And last night, just anecdotally, I had supper with one of my best friends, and she burst into tears. And I think actually, it was suicidal ideation. And I found out today, because I couldn't work out what was the matter. She was talking about, I just feel old and it's pointless, and what's the point of being alive? And this is not a woman, normally given to those sorts of thoughts. And I sent her a message this morning and I said, you changed your HRT? And she said, yeah, the doctor changed it 3 weeks ago. And so the way that she's feeling and the depression that she's under is entirely the result of her being given a wrong prescription. And, the fact that this is still going on in the 21st century.
So Mariella did mention a minister there who wasn't actually at that committee meeting. And she's talking about Maria Caulfield MP, who is a Minister for Women's Health. There was a bit of a hoo-ha about the fact that she wasn't there. Carol Vorderman had quite some things to say about that. But to be honest with you, it's all a bit involved. So, we'll just say that that's what happened. Anyway, what did you think about what Mariella had to say there?
I'd actually forgotten that there was a czar that only lasted 3 months. It's just isn't it, really? It's just really sad.
When you hear her actually going through everything that's happened, and she just did a really quick recap, because we've followed this over different episodes, and it is quite astonishing. Like, when you lay it out on a timeline like that, it's a bloody mess.
The reason we had a czar was because last year, I don't know if I remember this because I had real problems and it caused me nightmares. We couldn't get access to estrogen in certain forms. So estrogel was unavailable. People were being prescribed other things that then became unavailable. So we went from that to Sandrina gels. And so if you were used to a certain way of receiving HRT and you finally got a balance, you finally get some over all the stress and anxiety of trying to find something that's right for you. And then all of a sudden it's not available. It's the minimising that might actually have an impact on you. So I think what she's saying as well is, and it sounds awful, and I can totally empathise with her, and I hope her friend's okay. I've spoken to other people, and I'm not going to break their anonymity, but I've spoken to other people who've been in that stressful position recently because they've not been able to access either the right estrogen or utrogestin. And utrogestin, you need, if you're on estrogen and you have a womb, you have to take utrogestin, or you have to take some kind of progesterone. But there's been a shortage of utrogestin. So last year was all about the estrogen shortage, which they said they'd fixed, but they haven't, because I asked on our Effin Hormones Facebook page today, and there are still people saying still can't get my prescription filled in Scotland. Someone here in Yorkshire still can't get her prescription filled for Estradot or Estradot. So there are still problems, and Utrogestin, people are still having problems with that as well. So they're available elsewhere, but people are still having problems accessing them in the UK. So,
I mean, the fact is they had they had a czar, then they decided they didn't need a czar. I think Mariella's point ultimately is this isn't being taken seriously.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. But, you know, if we were
I think
taking it seriously, treat us equally, listen to us. We don't. We're not stupid. Don't treat us like stupid women.
At the time when they decided that we didn't need the czar, from what I was reading in the press at the time, the insinuation was that they were like, oh, it's all sorted now. Clearly, it's not all sorted. And it's interesting that you mentioned this, Terry, about the shortages and that still going on. And thanks for contributing to the Effin Hormones Facebook group, guys, so let us know what you're experiencing. But that leads us nicely on to what Kate Muir had to say. Before going to this committee, she had done her own little social media poll asking people if they were struggling to access progesterone or utrogestin. Should we have a little listen to what Kate Muir's experience was?
Yeah. There were about 7 or 8 places where people were getting utrogestin. And it's really important. And I don't think perhaps the minister understands why you can't say change to another kind of HRT, because utrogestin is the progesterone part that goes along with estrogen. You need the two together to protect your womb. If you do not have that to protect your womb and you're taking estrogen gel on its own, then you are at risk of endometrial cancer. Let's just make that clear. The women who've been left for a month with just the gel, just the estrogen, and not been given the progesterone to look after their womb are at risk. That I could get utrogestin for €5 in Spain, in Paris, and in Germany. So I don't think there's a European-wide shortage. I just think we're not paying for it enough here. We're not getting it in here. And we knew about this 2 years ago. So I think it's really a criminal neglect of women and women's health not to sort out that and actually the Estradot shortage, which is the other major shortage.
It's just gaslighting again, isn't it? It's like, well, there's a shortage in Europe, and no, there isn't an HRT problem, and just gaslighting.
It makes me very angry hearing that, actually, because I am one of those women. I went for at least a month not taking my utrogestin because I could not get it prescribed. And I just sort of went along with it and went, oh, yeah, typical, what a shame. I'll just keep taking me estrogen and I'm sure it'll be fine. And not really thinking about the health risks. But, just listening to Kate Muir there, who knows what she's talking about. We've had her on the podcast. She's a very intelligent woman. She knows more about the menopause than most people we've ever met. Telling us that has put me at cancer risk is mind-bogglingly scary, really. And that's through the incompetence of, the medical establishment, the government, not getting estrogen and estrogen and utrogestin into the country. It's absolutely appalling.
The other thing is I think when Kate was on, or somebody we had on was talking about how there's been a rise in demand. It's not a sudden spike. It's not going to go down again. It's a gradual rise as women are more educated about why we need hormones. And actually, as of October last year, you can now get utrogestin, the micronized progesterone. You can get that in Scotland. So women have been campaigning in Scotland to be able to access that because it wasn't prescribed there, whereas it was prescribed by NHS England. So there is only going to be an increased demand as more and more women, realise that they want to replenish their hormones and the health benefits for now and for future health of hormones. So, yeah, it's only going to increase.
When I think they sacked off the Tsar for this last time, I think one of the things I heard or read was when they went, well, it's basically Davina's fault that there's a shortage of HRT.
Yeah.
Well, you get people going to their GPs now, and their GPs are dismissing them, saying, "Oh, it's." I've seen anecdotal stuff where people have said they've been dismissed because of read something or seen something on TV, but actually, the people are becoming more aware of why they need
Well, quite,
HRT
exactly.
Take it.
It's not people suffering. It's not Davina's fault. It's not on trend. It's just people are aware. People are finally aware of what's going on and that they don't have to suffer and there is help out there. And, you know, Carolyn, one of the things she talked to us about and Louise has talked about to us about is having a national formulary. And then, you know, ordering the supplies to meet the national formulary, and then everyone gets the same treatment across the country. It's kind of a standardized, like, you know what you're doing. If you moved from one area to another, if you move from one GP to another, it's just...
Yeah, just to explain,
maybe
you haven't heard the other episodes. That means that not all GPs can prescribe the same HRT across the country. So actually that's caused problems with the shortages because there might have been a glut of a particular type of HRT, but the GPs in a different area couldn't access it. So that's why they've been calling for a national formulary to make everything more easily accessible.
And also give women the same access to micronized progesterone that they weren't getting. So like I said, in Scotland, women weren't able to access the best form of progesterone, which is, you know, the micronized version of it, but now they can.
Am I being naive? Because it just feels like there are very straightforward, common sense solutions to a lot of these problems. But for whatever reason, the will isn't there, it's incompetence. I can't understand why.
When you stitch it all together, you can't help but think there's incompetence involved, can you? Do you know what I mean?
Oh, the common denominator is we're women.
Yeah.
And I can't help but think women's health is like, do they give a damn? No, they don't. If they did, we wouldn't be fighting for equality. And, you know, some of the reports that have come out recently particularly about Black women's experience in the health system, you know, we have so much inequality and it's just that there's no research into this area in half of these areas that we don't know the half of what's going on with women's health because nobody gives a damn to actually research it. I say nobody, but lots of people have started to look at, you know, research into things like testosterone and, you know, impact of women's health and fitness and things like that. So, but I don't think policy. I think policy is way behind. I think the health service is way behind.
I think the difficulty with this as well is that there are so many different frontiers of this because it's an all-encompassing thing that can impact every single aspect of your life, right? And so one of the things that Kemi Badenoch was dismissing, they were dismissing menopause leave. And there's only so many things that you can try and push for change and do at any one point in time. And kind of Carolyn, if you listen to the Carolyn Harris episode, she really sums that up brilliantly because there's so much to do. And she says this herself, there are so many different areas that this impacts and she wants to work on all of it. But it's like, you've got to go one battle at a time. So then it becomes, if you're only talking about one particular issue, right, like campaigning to have menopause leave in workplaces, it then becomes more easy to gaslight it, doesn't it? I think. Just say, well, why would you want menopause leave? And that discriminates against men. Why would you want this one particular aspect of it? And it's actually, no, what these campaigners are trying to do, they're trying to do all of it. But the perception I'm getting is that these certain ministers are going for this individual thing and attacking it so that they don't have to do the rest of it because it's too hard.
They've not seen the bigger picture, the holistic view of women as a whole, and that women go through menopause, and that when they do, not everybody, but some women have the most horrendous experience of that. And there are ways that they could make reasonable adjustments in the workplace and elsewhere to address that. But they're like, well, we've already got them in place for women. But if they were in place
to go back to work.
Yeah, if they were in place and working, then we wouldn't be campaigning to get, you know, protected characteristic for, you know, and to have menopause leave if the existing policies actually worked, which they're not, obviously.
Should we cheer ourselves up with a bit of Carol Vorderman? Because she really is absolutely awesome. I really want you to hear these two clips, right? Because she's been kicking us left, right and centre. Should we have a listen to her?
Yes.
Go for it.
I was horrified when I was watching Kemi Badenoch, the Minister for Women and Equalities, a number of weeks ago, when you were questioning her, Carolyn. And I just couldn't, I could not, as a woman, a postmenopausal woman who was from a working class background, get over the patronising statements that she made. I thought they were insulting. They were insulting to all women. She basically said to Carolyn this was a left-wing issue when we were talking about menopause and a pilot in the workplace, and characteristically compared women going through terrible terrible menopausal symptoms with those who would want to have certain things that are given by government to those with ginger hair, to short people. I mean, it was just, what am I listening to here? It's the 21st century. This was like going back 100 years to when women just had the vote. I could not believe it.
Oh, I love that. I love her. Let me just play the second one. Yes, Carol.
She picked up on the exact word that you said, Bina, patronising. You know, the more we think about what she said, the way she spoke to Carolyn, as though Carolyn didn't know what she was talking about.
I thought Carolyn did so well.
Oh, she did brilliantly. Yeah.
Just being calm in the face of that kind of nonsense.
It was the way she said, we really do see how committed you are to women. I just thought, awesome. We really do see how committed she is.
That fired her up, didn't it? Yeah.
Let's have another listen to the second fabulous rant that Carol did. So this is in response to a question from Kate Osborne, who's the MP for Jarrow. She was also part of this committee, and she asked Carol a specific question. Well worth listening to this.
Yeah, I think Kate Osborne was the MP who kicked off the whole report in the first place with the recommendations.
Let's have a listen to this.
Can I ask you, Carol, the government, we touched on the recommendations from the committee, and one of the committee's recommendations that was accepted in principle was around appointing a menopause ambassador to work with businesses and unions and others to develop and disseminate good practice. And we now have a brand new voluntary menopause employment champion. What would you say to her if she was here with us today?
Would I say to her, hello? What I would say, given that the government response to your report was 3.5 months late, and I think the menopause task force hasn't sat since June last year, I'd say, have you seen the minister recently? And what is it that she has said to you? And what power do you have? And how much can one person do part-time? It's not enough. It just isn't enough. We keep going back to the same thing. It's not enough. Not anyone. It's just like, oh, that's a nice little tweak. I'm sure she's a wonderful lady. This is not personal. This is about going. Everything that we have said here, it has to come from the top down. When I read the government's response, the eventual response, obviously, to your report, it was, it was a whitewash. It was, and now we've done this. Oh, this is very nice. Jack and Ori tell a story. Oh, we've done this. Oh, that's lovely. Oh, isn't life lovely? And it was like, no, it isn't. You've rejected, in part or in full, 11 of the 12 recommendations. You have said that, menopause, no, we don't want to make it a characteristic in law. We don't want, it's, no, there's sex discrimination laws. That'll do. It won't do. It doesn't do. So the ambassador, who I'm sure will do her job as best she is able, it isn't enough.
Yes, Carol. Always.
It's enough.
She's great.
That's great.
Right. I want to give Carol an Effin this episode.
Can we put
an Effin award?
An Effin award, just because we haven't done Effins for a little while. But
perhaps we should remind people what they are, Helen.
Yeah, let's remind you what they are. So basically, an Effin is you nominate someone who has got you through it in some way. It could be a medical professional who's actually stepped up to the mark. It could be a mate who's listened to you having a screaming meltdown. Or it could be someone that you admire in the public eye. And there you go. I'm nominating Carol Vorderman for an Effin this episode.
Woo! Woo! Motion seconded.
Come on, Effin Hormones, Carol. Come on, babe.
I'll tell you what, I think between her and Carolyn, they're kind of like the embodiment of Welsh Dragon, aren't they? Pretty are, like.
They're not taking any shit, are they?
They're just not. They're just not taking any shit. It's great. But really heartening as well that, like, there are people who are out there, putting themselves out there, getting abused, being insulted in public, in a public forum like that's being filmed, that's been, and
I did want to bring you all of that and bring it all together because the Kemi Badenoch clip that was going wild on social media, the Carol Vorderman clip went wild on social media. So those are the two things I picked up on at the time. But I just think it's really important to kind of actually listen to some of the other things that were said as well and hear it in the round and go, actually, do you know what? There are people who are working really, really bloody hard to try and change things. And I'm really grateful to them for that. So thank you.
I also think as well, a lot of people are very busy. There's so much that's flying around social media. It's very noisy. There's a lot that's said. It's just constant. It just feels like the news is just constant. And the bad news is constant. I think distilling things down for our listeners in this way, where people can kind of hear what things are going on, because it's so easy to disengage from politics when it's just noisy and shouty and all this kind of stuff. So I hope that helps our listeners.
Yeah, thank you, producer Helen, for sorting that out. It was useful for me as well, just to put it all in perspective and sort of remember what happened back in March, really. And I just love the way that Carol Vorderman is getting more and more political and more angry in her old age. And it just shows menopausal women in the right light, I think, that we won't take any shit and we're going to keep fighting and we're going to keep on with the menopause revolution. So come on, Carol.
Come on, Carol. Go on, Carol. Go on.
Yeah.
Love her.
We've got a few shout-outs to do, actually. We've had some lovely people get in contact with us. For example, we've had a review from someone calling themselves Foxy Mank, which I love.
Oh, yeah.
Going down the chibby.
And they say, at last I found a podcast I can relate to in my hometown of Manchester by fellow Mancunians. Whoop. Funny, informative and comforting to know that we are not imagining all these crazy symptoms that the doctors do not know about. I binge listened series 1 and 2 while I was off work suffering from fatigue. Well worth a listen if you don't know what your body is going through. Well, thank you, Foxy Mank.
So thanking you, Foxy Mank.
Thanks, Helen.
It's not me, honestly. It's not me. No, I was dead chuffed when I saw that.
No, that's
Foxy Mank. It's lovely to hear from you. And I'm sorry you're off with fatigue. And all power to you. I hope you feel much better very soon.
Ditto.
Absolutely. And a big thank you to Karen as well, who's actually donated to our GoFundMe page. We massively appreciate that, Karen. If you can bung us a few quid to help keep us going, you can still do that. Go to our website at effinhormones.com. Just scroll down a bit, and then you'll get to a bit that says Be an Effin Star, and then you click on the star, and that takes you to the GoFundMe page. But a big thank you to Karen for donating.
Woo! Cheers, Karen.
Thanks, Karen.
Another effing for you.
Yes. And it was also lovely to hear from Jamie in Florida, Karen in Ontario in Canada, and Katrina, who absolutely loves all the fucking swearing.
Hey, a fucking welcome, Katrina.
No need.
No fucking problem.
Oh, God, let's get together and have a proper good old swear anytime. And I've really got to read this out. She signs off with love, vaginal dryness, and a whole new vocabulary.
Yes, you have to run that out.
Is that Katrina?
Yeah, Katrina.
Yeah, brilliant.
Love it.
Yay. Welcome to the gang, Katrina.
Yes, welcome to the gang, all of you. Thank you so much for getting in contact and interacting with us. That's just brilliant. And don't forget, you can join the Effin Hormones podcast page on Facebook. It's a very easy and nice way to stay in touch with all of the gang and all the other listeners as well. Whoop, whoop. Well, that's it for this episode. Thank you so much for listening to our big old catch-up. Don't worry, me and the gang will be back soon, probably in about a month or so. Go and check out effinhormones.com. You can listen to all the past episodes there too. Right, that's it from us. Love you. Bye. Whoop, whoop.
See ya. Bye.
Bye. Whoop, whoop.
See ya. Don't want to be ya.
What?
That's true.